If you coached you, would you be a good player? If you coached you, would you be proud of the coach that you have?
Hello and welcome to the Move the Chains podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Munsey. As an entrepreneur, best-selling author, and a keynote speaker, I help executives and leaders take the next steps towards success. Everyone needs a big goal, but unless you break that down into actionable steps, you will get overwhelmed and fall short. This is exactly what I help you do. Each and every week on this show, we'll bring you the best tools and tips to achieve your big dreams and also interview some of the world's most successful folks to learn how they've managed to push through to achieve their dreams. I'm really excited to bring you guys today's guest, Mr. Joe Coniglio. Joe is the linebackers coach for the Los Angeles Rams. He has previously coached linebackers at Navy and Kent State, as well as defensive line at Rhode Island and Northern Michigan, after being a two-time all-conference defensive end himself at Miami, Ohio. Joe's also a husband and a father of three. Joe, welcome to the Move the Chains podcast.
I appreciate the introduction, man. I'm very excited to be here.
So I want to jump in. We were talking a little bit before we hit record about your background. And like I said in the bio, you had a very successful playing career at Miami of Ohio. You were telling me that on your recruiting visit, you met a guy who is now your boss and he became your roommate. The guy that lived either right next door or right down the hall is also the defensive coordinator, Chris Shula, now. So tell me a little bit about how that familiarity and comfort level that you guys have has facilitated maybe better communication or the ability to have tougher conversations as you guys all pursue a common goal.
Yeah, I think the most important thing is when you have a relationship with somebody over the course of 20 years, there's some hard truths and some honest conversations that you can have with those guys that maybe other guys can't have with them. And I think as you sit down with, Chris or Sean, and you give them, the feedback that they're looking for, because the reality of it is high achievers don't always want to hear what you think they want to hear. Sometimes guys want feedback, whether I have Sean sitting in my meeting room or Chris sitting in my meeting room. The hard thing for me to do after a meeting will say, hey, Sean, what'd you think of that meeting? And sometimes he'll say it's great, but a lot of times I like to see myself as very aware. I'd be like, Sean, did I talk a little bit too much in that meeting? Was it not as conversational? Did I not provide maybe the feedback that those guys were looking for? Was it too lecture-like? And I think the thing that those guys will give that we'll give back to each other is an honest feedback that's going to help really all of us achieve and get better and continue to take steps forward. Because the thing that we want as coaches is we want to be coached. And if you really want to be a high achiever and you want to be a guy who can help reach our players, and you're surrounded by people who have great insight, great perspective, that can provide feedback that's going to help you become a better coach. I think those are things that you got to utilize. And it always helps when you have people that you trust, that have really had the built up friendship over the course of 20 years where, we're all in this thing together, and not that everybody else isn't, but I just think there's a difference when you guys go so far back. You've seen each other at your best and you've seen each other at your worst. And we've kind of been through everything together through the thick and the thin.
It brings up an interesting point on the opposite end of that spectrum where, especially in the NFL where there's as much turnover as there is, not just with coaches, but with players. How do you shortcut that? If a guy's new to the organization or you guys draft a rookie or there's a new coach, how do you get to that point where you can have that same level of connection and maybe what we might call effective communication, where you can say what needs to be said? Have over your coaching career, and especially now in the NFL, with that bigger, faster turnover rate, have you developed strategies or skills to be able to,
the way that I look at it is almost from a simple approach, and it's simple, but it's really hard. I would say the number one thing that you got to do as a coach in the NFL or really probably in anything that anybody would be involved in, is you got to be fluid. So you're going to deal with different personalities. You're going to have, there's going to be decisions that are made that aren't necessarily yours. There's going to be things that come up, or players that you become involved with in your position group. And you just got to be fluid. Everybody's got different personalities. Everybody needs to be coached maybe a little bit differently. And I think as you continue to have a fluidity there, I think those guys can feel that. And when you're fluid, you're always trying to make them better. Like, it's not always just going to go down the way that you want it to. And then the other thing other than fluidity is you got to be honest with these guys. The honest approach, and having the ability to sit down and have a man-to-man conversation in your office of, hey, this isn't the way that we want it to look, or hey, we're gonna call you up. We're not going to call you out. Let's call you up. Let's bring you in, and let's tell you how great of a job you're doing, and the expectations that you're continuing to achieve. I think the coolest thing is if you can be honest with these guys, you can have a fluidity and a flexibility. To me, those have been the two best things that I've done with our players, where I feel like they always feel like I'm fluid and flexible, where I can communicate with them. I'm always doing everything I can to help them be the best version of themselves, whether that's evaluating tape, or I just have a gut feeling that they're really not in the best headspace, having that conversation. And then can I tell them honest feedback that's going to help those guys achieve on a day-to-day basis, but in the right tone. Because, it's actually funny. I was just with one of my best friends, and we were on vacation, and we were talking about how, a lot of the kind of this coach speak is, if I love them, I can coach them really hard. Well, what does coach hard mean? Is that holding them to a high expectation? Is that yelling at them? So the thing that I always think about when I'm talking about my players is I want to talk to these guys in a respectable way. They understand there's an expectation. They also understand there's a fluidity and a flexibility that I'm going to use to help these guys achieve at their highest level. Because if I'm coaching a starter, or I'm coaching the fifth or sixth guy on our roster or at our position group, to me, the critical piece is going to be, how can I help that guy achieve, even though his skill set may be a little bit different? And I think when you can have honesty and a flexibility to help guys achieve, regardless of skill set or differentiating skill set, that's what those guys appreciate. They want to be treated like men. They want to have an honest approach, and they want you to be flexible with them so you can help them achieve their best self.
And you got my wheels spinning. I'm over here writing down questions as fast as I can. There's so many things I want to branch off and go into.
Sure.
So you talk about the expectation. So, and actually, before I get to that, I want to go back, because you said you want to call guys up, not call them out. Can you tell us a story about maybe something that could be shared, a time where you've done that? Like, what does that look like when you call somebody up as opposed to calling them out, and why?
Well, I'll just start from kind of square one. I'm not going to really mention any names, but there's a guy that I coach, and it's really he's early in his career, but I mean, it's the word I'm looking for. It's a very competitive room. As in all rooms in the NFL are competitive rooms, but there's a guy early in his career. And, he's really at the point where he's got to buy into being a special teams player and kind of see where his role falls as an outside linebacker, or it's going to be really hard for him to make the football team. And then we have these 3 weeks of OTA, or these 3 phases of OTAs. You have like OTA 1, that's really where you just get the opportunity to meet. OTA phase 2, where you're getting some meetings and some positional work on the field. And then you get to these OTAs, and it's really like our phase 3, where you can do kind of some good on good stuff. All right. Well, this guy has been really incredible in the way that he's worked, the way that he's invested. And I think you hold this guy to this standard where there's an honest approach of, hey, this is how it's going to go down. The expectation for you is, I think you can be a really good football player, but you haven't shown over the course of time that it's going to go down the way that you want it to. So what I want to see you do is give me everything you have over the course of these next 9 weeks. I'll do everything I can in my power to help you be the best player you can be. And let's see where the pieces fall. But the one thing that I know is that if you do everything you can look yourself in the mirror and you can say, hey, man, I did everything I could. And maybe it didn't go down the way that you wanted it to. Well, anyways, this guy did a phenomenal job in OTAs. And by the end of it, I just thought it was a cool opportunity to call him into my office. And, when you're getting called in by a coach, guys are like, what does coach want to talk to me about? Well, it was a great opportunity for me to call him in and call him up. Hey, you're doing an unbelievable job. You've really shown the improvement that we were looking for, the way that you've translated your skill set and done the things that we've asked of you over the course of the off-season program has been something that I'm really proud of, and I'm proud to be your coach. And I think when you can give these guys this honest feedback, but you can also, it's not always, hey, man, you got to do this better. And, as high achievers, we all want to do better all the time. But how can I help this guy really help himself achieve? But I also think it's the fine line of I'm going to call you up, but we have we're always continuing to strive for more. We haven't reached the pinnacle, but we're certainly getting closer by the way that we've worked over the course of time, if that makes sense.
Makes total sense. Full disclosure, we've got a really bad thunderstorm going on here and our power went out. So,
okay.
No, that makes total sense. And I think you sort of covered a little bit of the other question I want to ask you. Earlier you had mentioned expectation. And so if you've ever had a guy, it could be at this level, I would imagine that what I'm going to ask is probably something that happens maybe a lot of times in the NFL and in exactly the example you just went through, but maybe in college, because I think at the NFL, a lot of guys get it, right? They understand sort of the standard, the expectation. But if you've ever had a player that didn't get it, so to speak, how were you able to, like a guy that didn't get it, but then had that light bulb go off and all of a sudden, how were you able to get that guy there?
You know what? I think it depends on the guy. Now, I also think it's really cool because as a coach, really our calling is to reach every guy that we coach. So when I talk about, how did one guy get there versus how did another guy get there? I think those are just unique circumstances. The one thing that has kind of been overarching, I would say for me over the course of my coaching career is helping guys define and then giving them the freedom to fail. Something that we talk about all the time at the Rams is you're not going to find the enemy on the sideline. When guys have mistakes or they do things that they're not proud of, typically what happens in the NFL is when a guy makes a mistake, guess what? He knew he messed up. It's not like when he comes off to the sideline, he doesn't need to hear it from me as well. Now, there may be a little bit of, hey, here's the deal. We got to be better in this situation, or if we do this a little bit better. But I think when we talk in regards to the outside linebacker room, let's talk about this thing called extreme ownership. And I just break it down real simply. Like extreme ownership is we're not going to blame anybody else. We're going to give ourselves the opportunity. We have the power. So as the coach, if a guy makes a mistake, I'm thinking about myself. How could I have coached this guy better throughout the course of the week prior to the game to help him achieve and not make the mistake that he made? Well, if we have players in our room who are also asking those same questions, or I'm like, hey, such and such, you have to make sure that you're in the A gap here. All right. Just a simple coaching point. But I could have coached you better because if I would have coached you this footwork, I think it could get you there a little bit quicker. And then they say, no, coach, that's on me. You told me the right way to go about it. If I execute the way that we were talking through it, then I'll be able to get there. And now to me, that's growth, man. That's the opportunity to continue to achieve where there's no real blame placed. But what is that? That's the opportunity for guys to grow together and really create this trust and this rapport that to me is going to be a little bit more long lasting, especially when guys can trust that you guys are on the same page. And when they're making decisions out there, these are decisions that we're making together, and they're not. Here's the thing I tell our guys all the time too, and I think this is just the facts. The first time a player that I coach purposefully does something wrong will be the first time ever. They're not trying to do wrong. So how can I get to these guys and help them understand what their play ops are, what their play opportunities are, but also not only what are their player opportunities, but when is the time they got to play within the scheme and the structure so that we can be sound as a defense. And those guys know that's not their opportunity to go achieve. But here's the deal. Better players typically are going to get more play ops. So we're still going to find the ops for certain guys. And if it isn't your op, then you got to play within the scheme and the structure and help us be right. But guys got to understand that. And if we can help them understand that, then we're going to be better for it.
And I love your approach to coaching. I mean, it is truly focused on your guys. And I'm just curious, as you're talking through, like, who have been some of your biggest influences as a coach? I mean, where did all of this, where did it come from is not a fair question, but, obviously you've had some great coaches, great mentors. Can you talk a little bit about how your philosophy has developed and where this desire to help these other individuals grow and develop comes from?
Yeah, I think it all really stemmed from when I was a player. When I played, I always look back and I'm like, man, because here's the number one, Ryan, I think you'll love this. This is the first question we always ask. If you coached you, would you be a good player? If you coached you, would you be proud of the coach that you have? And I think those are just really good questions where it's like, so when I played, there was just a lot of things that I wish would have been done to help me be a better player. And I love the coaches that I had, so there's no slight on that. But I feel like that was really the number one thing that I wanted to do when I got into coaching was how can I reach these guys the way that would have helped me, maybe a little bit more. And then when you're kind of working throughout, the players that I coach, they teach me more than I probably teach them. Because really, as a coach, I reinvent myself every year. It's like, oh, okay, well, we didn't do this very well. How can I go back and look at that or look at this? So I'd say the first people that have taught me the most are the guys that I've coached, the experiences I've had. That hard player that the light bulb finally went on. And I was like, man, if I would have said that 6 months earlier, that I would have been such a better player. But I think we just got to look at it like that. And if we don't, as a coach, I just think you're wrong. But I mean, I've had some really great people and mentors, like Brian Newberry is the head coach of the Naval Academy. What a phenomenal human being, a great coach, and great, really just developer of talent and developer of human beings. Ken Niumatalola was at Navy. The way that he taught, just the ability to be a great person and a great man. Sean Lewis is the head coach of San Diego State, and he was always an evolver. It was always, we always were on the cutting edge of everything. John Haycock said, meant what he said, even though he really didn't, a lot of times he didn't have to say much, but you always listened. He's the defensive coordinator at Iowa State. So there's some really good guys. And then obviously the guys that I work with right now, I mean, Sean McVay's got the best energy, the incredible communicator, incredible scheme, incredible friend, incredible relatability. I mean, this guy is the total package. What a complete stud. And then really just falls down to Chris Shula as well. But just learning a lot from these guys and the way that they impact and influence in really a different way. And what can I take away from, what Chris Shula is doing to impact our defense, but take it away from him, but still put it in help me do it in my own way. So that it still feels authentic.
You mentioned kind of McVay and then the trickle down to Shula. And so I love in a corporate setting using the football org chart as an example. I think there's a lot of carryover to a typical corporate setting. And so I'm really curious how maybe a guy like McVay communicates standards, culture, all the intangibles, in addition to the scheme, that sort of waterfall trickle down effect. So I'm curious if you're able to articulate or share some of the things that you guys do, because I'm sure there's some intentionality in order to have every room pulling in the same direction, being in alignment. And I think in sports, it's very easy because you can say, it's very binary. Did you win the Super Bowl or not? And if not, we didn't hit our goal. Sure. It's a little different business to align on the same objective, but I still think the communication and sort of the impact is the same.
Yeah, I think the first thing that we want to do is we want to communicate with our guys in bite-sized increments. We don't want to give them a bunch of information. We don't want to throw a bunch of stuff at a board. We want our guys to understand, for one, that we're going to work hard and we're going to have enjoyment. And that's really the we part of, kind of some of the mantra that Sean talks about, the we, then the me. So we talk about that. All right. So we want the work and the enjoyment. And that's really what we bring together as a group on a day-to-day basis. We're going to work and we're going to enjoy. Okay. And then the other piece is the mindset and the energy. Well, that's up to us. So when we talk about the mindset and the energy, we want to have the right mindset and makeup. It's a mental toughness in a mindset, but it's also a way that we're going to approach, because the thing we talk about with our mindset is you're either going into a storm, you're in a storm, or you're coming out of a storm. And how we deal with adversity is going to be the separator. Because we've had some adversity at the Rams. It hasn't all been, it all hasn't gone down the way that we wanted it to. I've had adversity with players who have had a ton of success, but it's like the way that we get through those tough moments are going to be the differentiator in the way that we continue to achieve. So I think that's really the critical piece. And then just the energy that we bring to the building every single day, the way that we communicate and the consistency that we have with our players. The one thing that I'll tell you is really important. So we talk about we, then me, because we say the me matters. And a lot of times in team sports, I think a lot of guys always talk about, hey, if you win, everything's great and dandy. It's funny. I'm watching that quarterback documentary, and I'm watching Kirk Cousins, and they win a game against the Saints. And I think it didn't go down the way he wanted it to as a quarterback, but he won, but he was disappointed in his performance. And I think that's something we have to understand as coaches, is that our players, even though that we win, they still want to achieve. And it's okay for them to want to achieve. So the guys that I coach, I understand that they want to have production. They want to make plays. They want to help our team win. But they also have personal expectations and objectives that they want to reach as well. And I think as coaches, the way that we have to look at that is we have to understand it and we have to be okay with it. And we got to help those guys achieve their goals. Whereas obviously we're trying to achieve that same team objective, but it's okay for those guys to want certain things for themselves individually while still working within the team framework. And I think those are some of the ways that we want to make sure that we're communicating with our guys, and our guys feel that. They feel that we're going to do everything we can for them, but we also understand that it's the we, them, the me mentality, where it's us first, but we understand the me matters.
I love that. And as you're talking through it, I can't help but think, I also really, I think the bite-sized chunks is such a great way of looking at how do you disseminate information. I'm sure you guys, especially during the season, you've got a pretty set and structured cadence of meeting frequency. Mm-hmm. I also think that puts, it sounds to me, especially you mentioned this earlier, you asked the question of if Sean sits in on one of your meetings, you're asking him immediately afterwards for feedback on the meeting. And that's something that I doubt in the corporate world. Somebody who runs a meeting is asking somebody else for feedback on how the meeting went. And I'd also be willing to bet on the front end that you're doing a lot of prep prior to the meeting to make sure that it goes well. And so I'm just curious how do you decide what chunks to give them and when?
You know what? It's so fluid. And that's really where I've gotten. You know what, Ryan? I used to be very rigid in the way I went about everything. And I almost feel like that rigidity created to almost like a stiffness. And the one thing that I want to have with my guys is I want to look at every meeting a little bit differently. Hey, if this meeting goes down the way we want it to, okay, great. Let's move forward. But what are some things we can improve on? I walk into my meeting, and every year, like I said, I reinvent myself. So it's like, okay, I walk into my meeting, and the one thing that I always want to do is I call it a tone setter. But it'll just be like a question that I ask my guys to kind of get them a little bit off football. But it's also, hey, what's your favorite high school football memory? Or just kind of get the opportunity for guys to get to know each other. But in all of my meetings, the best meetings I've ever had are conversational. It's not, I'm like just spewing information. I want to pull up tape. I want guys to be interactive. I want them to tell me exactly what they see, how we see it, and how we can get to an alignment where we're still having the same, we still are getting to the same thing. But I also think in a lot of those instances, my players be like, hey, coach, why can't we line up with this foot up? Or why can't we do this? I'm like, try it tomorrow. And then if you think it's better and we think it's better and you watch it and you think it's better than the way we're doing it, I'm all in on doing that. And I think when you give guys purpose, you give guys the ability to have a voice. It's because, the thing that doesn't work with me is, hey, I'm your coach. I said it, do it. It just doesn't go down. That's just not the way that it works. Really, we're going to decide as a group. And then if there's a way that we can do things better, then that's awesome. But I also want to see guys put their personality into the game. So it's almost like when I'm coaching one guy versus coaching another guy, I want to see their personality show up. And when guys show up with a personality, they don't have a fear of failure. I feel like you can coach guys into a box. And really, I believe a bad coach can make a great player average because you're just asking him to do things that may not be exactly into his skill set or where his talent lies. So I would say those things are very fluid. My best meetings are going to be conversational meetings where guys have a voice. We're working through things together. But, a lot of decisions that I'm making is like, hey, because again, if you're not an aware coach too, like you're going to struggle. It'll feel like a lecture in there. I'll be like, dude, let's put on, hey, so-and-so, what music you want to put on? Or, hey, let's pull up such and such's highlight film from high school. It's just, how can we make these things interactive where my guys want to come back in the meeting every single day? They want to learn, but they know it's not going to be just pulling teeth. There's going to be an interaction. There's going to be a growth. And it's not going to be just always so serious. Like, it's going to be loose, but it's going to be full of expectations and standards. And I do feel like, Ryan, you can walk that line though, because it's the fine line of like, we're joking around, we're having a good time, but it's the fine line of that and like being sloppy. It's the fine line of learning and getting nothing out of the meeting. So I just, you got to walk that fine line. You got to be very aware of the way that you're approaching certain things in certain meeting settings, because there are times where I'm like, man, it's getting a little too loose. Or, man, this just feels, it's just dull in here, And I think if you have that, there's a lot of power in just being able to see that and feel that.
Well, if you see that, you feel that, you notice it, how do you get it back on track without the whole thing just going off the rails?
Typically, I'll just say, hey, we got to lock in. Or if it's dull and it's all football, it'll just go to, hey, man, let's throw on some music. Let's put something interesting on. Maybe it's a YouTube video I saw, or bring up something like get off football for a second. But I think it's just a naturalness and a fluidity of, hey, let's get off maybe too much football, maybe too much fun. Let's kind of reinvent ourselves. Let's kind of correct this thing, get it going back the way we want it to, because that's the thing we want to do, right? We're playing football. There's a lot of stress. There's high standards and expectations. We want to have fun. We want to do football, but we also have to have the ability as coaches to walk that fine line of doing both without it going sideways either way.
Yeah. Something you said a minute ago, I'm trying to paraphrase this, but if somebody is able to play, if they're able to bring out their personality, you can remove fear of failure. I love that concept. Can you maybe elaborate on why that phenomenon exists?
So this is my favorite stuff that I do with our players. So it's pretty cool. The thing that I talk to our players about all the time is that if you're a good football player, you have to live in what we call the gray. All right. Because everything's not going to be defined. And to me, the easy thing as a coach is to put everything in this definite, right? Hey, you got to force the ball to go back inside. You have to stay at the depth of the quarterback. You have to do this. Like, there's no have tos. So, and the cool thing that we'll do is we'll show some clips of certain players that we have where they'll jump around a block or they'll do something that I'm not okay with, but it's a TFL or it's a sack. I'm like, you want to take that away from them? Yeah, I didn't think so. So the thing that I tell our guys is, hey man, every player writes its own story. Every responsibility can be done a multitude of different ways. So when you give these guys, because here's the thing that I know, when I give guys freedom like that, there's going to be some times it doesn't go down the way we want it to. And there's also going to be some times that I'm going to say, hey, I told him he could do that. And then, I'm hearing from, whether it's Schuler or Sean or those guys are letting me know that they're not real fired up about the way that it went down. But the thing that I'm going to do is those guys are going to have the freedom to put their personality on the game, understand their ops, be able to utilize these different skill sets that they have based off different concepts. Because I'll say, hey, just because they ran this play doesn't mean it's going to look the same way every time. How I hit that block the first time and how I hit that block the third time, if we keep doing it the same way, then we're playing on their terms. We're going to play on our terms. They're really not going to know. We're going to have the ability to kind of change the math in the way that we want to and utilize our skill sets in these differentiating ways. And some guys are better at certain things than others. But if we can have the ability to live in the gray, we can have the ability to utilize our skill sets without a fear of failure where you're going to go shoot your shot. You're going to go try to make that play. And in a lot of instances, maybe when I was a player or times that I've coached, 10 years ago, my guys didn't feel like they could go shoot that shot. They just didn't. They felt like if they did, then their coach was going to rip their ass on the sideline, or they were going to lose reps. But having the way that I coach our players, I'm going to give them a lot of room to make decisions on their own. All right. But it could also go the opposite way. And I tell them that. I say, hey, we're going to play like this. I'm on your team, but what we want to get done is we want to see a productive, tough football team, a productive, tough position group. But we're going to play on our terms. We're going to do things our way. We're going to play within the scheme and the structure of the defense. We're going to understand our ops. But we're also going to understand just because so-and-so hit the block like that doesn't mean you do too. We just want this. We just want the outcome that we're hunting up. If we get that outcome we're hunting up, regardless of who you are, regardless of how you do it, we're going to be okay with it.
Man, I love that. So in some of your previous stops, you've also served as a recruiting coordinator. Yeah. And I'm curious if you're able to share, maybe walk us through some of that process of how you evaluate a person's fit for an organization. Are you prioritizing, I think I know the answer to this, are you prioritizing character or talent? And how do you evaluate those intangibles?
I would say this, it's a little bit different kind of maybe everywhere I've been, where, when you're at, because everything matters, right? So if you're at Kent State and you're recruiting a number of different guys where I had coached, I thought Sean Lewis did a phenomenal job in regards to kind of defining these qualities that we wanted from these guys and how exactly it looked. And a lot of times in these situations, you're putting out 10 offers and you end up getting 3 players. Okay. So it's a little bit different in regards to you want to find a guy that's going to fit your mold, but you also want to find a guy that you're going to like to coach. You're going to be enjoyable too, but you're also looking for, you're trying to hit on 3 out of 10. So to me, that's a little bit different. When you're at the Naval Academy, you're talking about you're recruiting the best and the brightest in the country to come to, one of the top educational institutions in the United States. Well, now all of a sudden, like those guys are going to have the leadership tools and tools and mentality that you're looking for. So it's just a little bit different in that way. You want to bring the right guys in that you think are going to fit into the or into the program. But a lot of those guys have prior military roots, or they have an aspiration to do that stuff. And a lot of guys, actually, we go and we tell them about what the opportunities that you're going to provide at the Naval Academy, and they really didn't know, but they're really intrigued. So that's cool. And then, like, when you're looking at the NFL, the way that we would look at it as a Rams organization, and I'm not going to speak for anybody, but like, we're going to prioritize we want the right guys. We want the right type of guy in the organization. Talent is certainly a bonus, and we want to get the best players we can, but we want to get the best fit. When we talk in regards to the best fit at the Rams, like, we want guys that love football, that love to compete, that can deal with adversity, are high achievers. And we have a phenomenal scouting department that does a lot of that stuff for us. And really, we have the opportunity to watch the tape as coaches. And then our scouting department kind of puts together, these really detailed, organized, informational lists of how these guys tick, what makes them go, what they've heard from their position coach, their high school coach, their mom, their dad, whatever it may be, all these people that have touched their lives. And then typically, when we bring these guys into the organization, we're trying to bring in the best fit possible for the organization from everything that we know based off football, mindset, mentality, and makeup. And if that guy fits being what we would call a Ram. So again, it's just very different in regards to, if you're recruiting at a military institution, if you're recruiting at a MAC school, where you're trying to hit on 3 out of 10, and that's just reality. And again, recruiting's changed a lot now with the NIL. And then when you have the opportunity to really draft the guys that you want into your organization, I just think in regards to those decisions you get to make, they're just all a little bit different, but they're all unique in their own way.
Certainly. You mentioned guys that love to compete. Are there any little games or competitions that you guys do, like on a daily or weekly basis, that you really enjoy or that the guys love?
Yeah, I mean, we'll do, I'll do like Jeopardy with our guys. I'll do some different things in regards to, like, so we always do this get off where we put a tennis ball down and have a stopwatch. But there are just some unique things where we'll try to be competitive. But I think the most competitive thing they do is when we get into our team settings and they want to compete with each other for whether it be sacks or making plays. And the cool thing is a lot of guys, obviously, they want to achieve themselves, but they're really happy for each other. And the number one thing we can do as a position group is we can be a player-led group, where I'm there to facilitate the drills, obviously, always make sure that they understand what the standard is, but those guys know the standard, they understand it. And some of our more veteran players are holding some of our players that maybe don't know exactly what it looks like to that standard. And if we can do that over the course of time, to me, that's what's going to create a group that's going to be proud. They're going to play with a toughness, an intent, and they're going to go about it the right way, where they understand kind of the fine lines that we can walk of having fun, but also live into this expectation where, we want to ultimately be as good a position group as there is in the NFL.
As you're talking through that, I'm just wondering, is there like one quality or one thing that you feel like stands out that would make a difference for a guy in the NFL? Like what makes a true professional, or the difference between guys who make it and those who don't? Mindset.
That's it. I say it all the time. If you have the right mental makeup, you have these guys that I coach, the guys that achieve the most, the mindset and the makeup, how they go about their business. I would say it's mindset. And I think that's pretty self-explanatory. Like, they understand it. They get it. They're pros. And they're tough. They're just tough. A lot of times you look at some of these guys and, there's maybe some questionable character stuff, but I think the guys that we're coaching at the Rams, they're tough and they got the right mindset and makeup. And if you're tough and you got the right mindset and makeup, just simply put, you're going to have an opportunity to be successful. And again, does that guarantee anything? No. But what it does guarantee is you've got a shot. So I would say those are the two things. If you got the right mental makeup and if you have the toughness to achieve over the course of, a long 17-game season, OTAs, and the competition that you're going to have to deal with on the day-to-day basis, that's going to be the toughness. And again, like if you're the best player at the Rams at the position group, all right, then can you be the best player in the NFL at the position group? There's always something to achieve. And I think of the mindset and the makeup and the ability and the understanding that work works, and we're going to do everything we can to help our guys achieve, but they also understand that they need to do everything they can to help themselves achieve.
I like that question. Like, if you're the best on this team, can you be the best in the league? And you keep expanding like the room that you're putting yourself in. When you sit down, you mentioned kind of at the top of this, like the ability to have a hard conversation with a guy or tell somebody what they need to hear, even if maybe they don't want to. I think in and of itself, that can be a challenge for some people. But specifically, if the individual is, say, a key player in an organization, the example that comes to mind for me with you is like a guy like Jared Verse, right? I don't know anything about him, so this is really not about him, but I could see how it might be easy to be nervous or to hold back or to play small as a coach when you have a person that is of that caliber or whatever reputation it might be. Do you have any advice for somebody that may be in a position where they're afraid to, or they feel nervous about executing their role as coach or leader the way that they need to for that certain individual?
I think it goes back to something even deeper. I would say, what's the rapport you have with that player? Because as much as we talk about, like, they don't care how much you know unless they know how much you care. There's got to be a rapport and a respect from the players that you coach, that for one, because the NFL is a production-based business. So does so-and-so, whatever player it may be, for one, believe that I'm making him better and trust that the things that I'm teaching him or the things that I'm going to try to pull him in and have a conversation about is going to actually make him better? And is there a believability that if, we have this conversation, that it's going to get accomplished? So I would start with that. I would say, if you're a guy and you're a coach and you're about to have a hard conversation, for one, you got to have a built-up rapport with a player. You also have to have his best interests in mind. You also have to see it from their perspective. Because here's the deal. Any player that I coach and I'm going to have a hard conversation with, like, those are conversations that all of us are kind of like, oh man, like it's just hard to do. I mean, it just is. Whether I'm calling in a guy because he's not playing good enough and I don't know if he's going to make the team, or I'm calling in a guy because I want to call him up. Like, that's an easy conversation to have. Hey, you're doing a great job. But when you're calling a guy in and it's a hard conversation, but that the conversation is going to help for the number one thing that we want to do at the Rams, and really I would say in any successful organization, is you're making decisions and you're having conversations that are in the best interest of the organization. And if a conversation with somebody is in the best interest of the organization, then you need to call them in and have that conversation, as uncomfortable as it may be for the coach, and maybe as uncomfortable as it's going to make the player. The timing and the tone is everything. So when I call this player in, how am I going about this? Is this just, am I just jumping them? Am I looking at it from his perspective? Are we going to leave this conversation better than when we started it? I just think there's a lot of things that go into that. I don't think you can just have this defined role and, any coach can just call any player in and just have a hard conversation. It just doesn't go down like that. There's just a lot more to it than just maybe that. Because, a lot of my players, if there's something that's going on maybe behind the scenes that I don't know about, I think I'll call them in and I'll have that conversation with them. But again, if it's for the best interest of the organization and the best interest for them and our football team to have a conversation like that, then we need to have it. And then the timing and the tone's got to be right. And you need to have a good rapport before you start having these hard conversations, or else it may not go down the way you want it to. And it may end up kind of setting you back instead of taking a step forward.
Yeah, I like that. So, Joe, we got a few minutes left. I want to be respectful of your time, but we'll give you, this will be as you put it earlier, kind of a lighter question. And for a fan watching this season, what is something that they could look for on the field when watching a game that maybe they didn't know to look for or hadn't been, like, just to pay attention to the game at a deeper level and get more out of it?
Yeah, I don't know if this is a deeper level, but the one thing that we try to take a lot of pride in on defense at the Rams is how hard we play on defense. And, all of our guys just understanding that that can be the separator for us, the urgency and the effort that we play with, and then the way that we play. The thing that I like to tell our guys, and I already said it once, but we like to play on our terms. So we want to play with the physicality. We want to play on their side of the line of scrimmage, essentially from the standpoint of our position group. But the other thing that I think guys can look for, because a lot of times you just watch the game and you see the results, is the enjoyment that our guys play with and the love that they have for each other. Because the thing that I think you'll see a lot from our group is guys celebrating other guys' wins and other guys' successes, and that is, I don't know, I haven't been on any other NFL teams, but the one thing that I would tell you is I think our guys got a joy and a love for each other, and I think our coaching staff has a joy and love for each other. That we celebrate each other and we celebrate our successes. And I think if you see a team that celebrates with each other and that plays really hard, I think you'll see a team that's probably that's pretty successful.
Tell you what, man, if you were on the recruiting trail, you'd have me wanting to come hang out with you guys. Joe, give me your final piece of advice for a listener who wants to be more consistent or better at moving the chains.
I learned this a long time ago, and I thought it was really a good piece of advice. But just because you have a habit to do something doesn't mean it's ever easy. And whether that's showing up for my guys on a consistent basis, the way that they need me to show up, or that's showing up for my family, the way they need me to show up, just because it's a habit, whether it's waking up at 5:30 and working out every morning, these habits, I don't know that they ever get easier. They may be more routine, but I think anything that's worth it isn't easy. So the way that you invest, and really, I would just say this, this is something that I try to live by, is live your life with purpose. If what's your purpose? And I think that's the coolest thing that coaching provides me, is I have a purpose to players. I have a purpose to coaches. There's an expectation and a standard that I want to live up to, and I have the ability to affect guys on a day-to-day basis. And I just challenge everybody that's listening to, challenge yourself to have an impact or an effect on everybody that you interact with, because I think that's, the coolest thing about life is having a purpose, having an intention, and helping guys grow and be the best version of themselves, whether, it's a coworker, it's your family, it's your son or your daughter. But a lot of that is just, kind of the way that I try to live and the way that we try to emulate at the organization that I work for currently.
I love it. Other than watching the Rams on Sunday, where can our listeners get more of you or hear more of stuff like this out of your mouth?
That's a good question. We do some stuff over the off season where we do we kind of do it's almost like a hard knocks type thing for the Rams. So we did something last year that was kind of built into the Rams. We do like a 4-episode series, so that's been cool. But really, it's
Is that on YouTube or just any streaming?
I think it's on YouTube. I think it was called Behind the Grind.
Okay.
So there was an outside linebacker piece there. So there's an opportunity to kind of learn some more about our guys from last year. Obviously, we got some new guys this year. But yeah, in regards to some of that other stuff, I'm doing the best job I can coaching our players. And, I guess if you want to hear more from it, hopefully you just tune in on Sunday and watch. I'm sure Jared Verse will have plenty to say to somebody. So that'll be good.
It's got to be fun to coach a guy like that.
Oh, yeah. No, I think they all are unique in their own way. All players are unique in their own way. But I also think I think the cool thing is, though, it's like, let these guys be themselves. It's just like, let them be themselves. And the way that Jared Verse approaches the game and the way that any of these other guys approach the game, there's a beauty in all of it. And if you don't look at it like there's a beauty in all of it, or one's better than the other, then I just don't think that's right. I think you got to let these guys be who they are. And I think if you let them be who they are, then, you're going to make them a lot more comfortable in their own skin. You're going to help them be a lot more comfortable in their own skin. And then you're also going to give them the ability to achieve at the level that and the expectations that they have for themselves.
Yeah, that's awesome. Joe, thanks so much for hanging out with us on the Move the Chains podcast. And for everybody listening, glad you're here. Appreciate you guys being a part of this. And stay tuned. Every week, we're going to bring you more tools, tips, strategies, and interviews to help you move the chains and fuel your successes. Make sure you subscribe to the Move the Chains podcast wherever you listen so you get notified of new episodes. And if you like what you're hearing, please leave a review and share this episode with a friend. We'll catch you next time.